All right, let's move on to some other topics. Hey everyone, I'm your friend, me and Buster Green, and today's topic is kind of hilarious. Today we are going to talk about the live-action Last Airbender, and even though it hasn't come out yet, it's already made a huge controversy. All right, so I need to timestamp some of these events because a lot has happened already in this shitstorm, and once again, there's so many interesting connections going on. So this story originally officially begins on Tuesday, January 30th, where an article came out, and this article was everywhere. It was on Deadline, it was on Variety, it was on Forbes. It was your typical Netflix mass publicized article where a bunch of websites just shared the same article with the same headline. And that headline was hilariously, Netflix Avatar The Last Airbender will take out the sexism. And my jaw just dropped on the floor because, obviously, I just never realized that Avatar The Last Airbender was so sexist, so revolting, that they obviously need to make a kid-safe version, and let alone the kid-safe version is apparently going to be the new live-action version. Did you guys know Avatar The Last Airbender was so sexist? I guess it's one of the most sexist pieces of media ever made. They had that episode where all the characters were wearing bathing suits. I don't know. All right, so once again, this is a mess, and I am going to have to go through this thing chronologically because there's a lot of ridiculous events leading up to this that get us to here. And I'm just laughing at this right now because prior to Tuesday, I actually thought this brand new Airbender was going to be a lot more sexy than the original. Want to know how? I'm going to tell you. All right, stay tuned. All right, so if you're not familiar with anything I'm discussing, there was once upon a time in the year 2005, a show called Avatar The Last Airbender. And it was a really big deal when it came out because it was the year 2005 and anime was not what it was now. Anime was just starting to become mainstream in America. And back in 2005, most people, if you asked them on the street if you like anime, they would say no. And most of them would say, I hate anime. Avatar was the first anime style show Nickelodeon had, and I say anime style show because all accounts it was mostly made in California and Korea, but that's a discussion for another day. Anyway, the big deal was Nickelodeon had very rarely, if ever, licensed anime. The only time I can think of them doing it was they had licensed Speed Racer X at one point, but then it got sued off the network in a matter of months. Otherwise, this was mostly a thing with Cartoon Network grabbing all the anime for Toonami, and Nickelodeon just didn't move like that. So they decided that since they always make their own shows, screw it, they would just make their own anime. And it was seriously cool because no one had ever done that before, and Avatar turned out to be a great and huge successful show. Now, it later on got a loosely connected sequel called Legend of Korra, where the main character spent 3 years in a weird lackluster love triangle, only to decide she was a lesbian and fuck off to another plane of reality. But that's another story for another time. Let me know if you want me to review Korra. I'll think about it. Anyway, back to the original Avatar show. People loved the heck out of that one, and eventually, hot on the heels of Lord of the Rings, making the Warner Brothers dump truck full of money, and then Harry Potter also making a dump truck full of money. In 2008, a mere 3 years after the original show had ended, Paramount wanted to make $1 billion, and so, for whatever reason, they put into effect a goddamn live-action Avatar The Last Airbender. And if you haven't been following events, you might think, oh wow, it actually took them 12, 20 years to finish this live action Airbender. And well, I guess technically that is not an untrue statement. Interestingly though, they actually did make a live action Last Airbender in 2010. And yeah, that's how it happened the first time they did this. In 2010, a live action Last Airbender movie, coincidentally called The Last Airbender, came out in movie theaters, and it had to be called The Last Airbender because at the same time it was coming out, another movie called Avatar also came out, and it kind of locked up the ownership rights to having a movie called Avatar in that year. So that was super ironic. So yeah, that movie came out, and right from the get-go, there was a lot of bad buzz around it. Now, the film was directed by M. Night Shamaylan, the guy who always includes a twist ending at the end of his movies, except not this one. Anyway, this was his one and only attempt at making $1 billion movie. And while the live action Last Airbender is not the worst live action adaptation I've ever seen in my life, I would say it was like better than like Super Mario Brothers or Double Dragon, which had come before it. The movie had a lot of very questionable casting choices. Pretty much all the casting of the Chinese coded Fire Nation villains were played by Indian actors. And at the same time, all these South Asian style waterbenders were these Euro-Aryan white people. And so somehow a cartoon about a war between a bunch of countries in Asia was suddenly about white people fighting Indian people. And that was probably Shyamalan's like personal dream. I think that's what he wanted to see because he's a Hindu Indian American, and maybe that was his subconscious dream of just seeing like this war between the races. But nonetheless, it doesn't resemble the source material at all. And that was the first big outrage with the 2010 movie. Now, I don't think that was what necessarily ruined the 2010 movie, however. By all accounts, I think what ruined it was just bad pacing, bad scripts, and the major thing that put it in the grave was severely bad VFX. Now, I don't know who was in charge of budgeting this thing, but the VFX on this film were laughably bad. There's this one really bad shot where like a guy just floats a single brick across the screen and he looks like he's about to like poop himself. But yeah, as time has gone on to remind us, you can't make $1 billion movie without buying some $1 billion VFX. Because if you're not going to pay for the VFX, why are you even making this stupid movie? So anyway, long story short, the movie had bad VFX and it bombed. And that's too bad because it has a hilarious cliffhanger ending where they set up Indian Azula. Anyway, M. Night Shyamalan continued to bump up and down through the course of his life, and he actually did have to have a career comeback after this with his pretty cool Unbreakable trilogy, which played out surprisingly well. However, after this movie, he permanently went back to his lane of making upscale horror movies, and he never again tried to make either a kid's film or another $1 billion movie. But that put the whole live-action Airbender thing in this like whole sore area at Paramount, because Paramount still wanted that Lord of the Rings Harry Potter money, and they had no other outlet to seek it out because they just didn't have any other kids franchises strong enough to make a live-action $1 billion movie for young adults. And so time marched on, and Paramount continued to not have any new ideas. There were suddenly 2 new reboots of Spider-Man, both with their own continuity, and they finally decided, well, fuck it, we'll just reboot live-action Live Airbender and do it all over again. And this time around, Netflix stepped up to help them distribute the reboot, which is now a full-length live-action drama series coming out very soon. Now, the live-action Netflix reboot was greenlit in 2018, and once again, it took them a very long time to make it. This time, it took them almost 5 years, mostly because of the pandemic, but also because of serious creative differences, which might have made them start over or something. Now, look, when this production started, it seemed like it was going to be perfect this time around. The reboot promised that the whole cast would be properly their own race this time, and that the original cartoon creators, DiMartino and Konizenko, is that how you say it? Anyway, they were supposed to be the executive producers and showrunners on the new Netflix version to ensure that nothing would go wrong and that the show would respect their original vision. However, just 2 years later, in August of 2020, the original Avatar creators ended up leaving the project, citing that they had no control over it and that the project was already diverting from their original vision. And the rumors of what exactly caused this walkout are the most juicy part. And this is the part that's actually really funny. So remember how I started this video with the shocking reveal that the Netflix Avatar will be less sexist than the original? So the whole deal with the 2020 walkout was that the rumors were the live action show was going to age up the characters into adults. They would all be in their mid-20s, or maybe they would be played by actors in their mid-20s, because that's kind of what Hollywood does. But the main reason they would be aging up the characters was that Netflix had mandated that the new live-action Avatar remake would be forced to include 2 sex scenes, because I guess that was just the policy at Netflix at the time. They'll give you $1 billion to make your show, but you have to have a little bit of that porno edge in there. Now, as far as the rumors go, that's about it. You have to make up your own headcanon onto what adult version of which character was going to get with who, and how they were going to somehow manage to sandwich not 1, but 2 of these sex scenes into an otherwise faithful adaptation of a 20-year-old kids cartoon. Mind you, season 1 of the cartoon, where not quite a lot happens. And this is just a rumor that they have never proven, but it's hilarious, and there is some evidence that this was real, because when the horrible Cowboy Bebop live action came out on Netflix, it also contained 2 completely worthless sex scenes. It has a worthless sex scene where Netflix Faye Valentine established herself as a sexually confused lesbian, which completely goes against the character's identity and her canon backstory. And then, even worse than that, there is a technically canon sex scene between the show's horrible effeminate clown version of Vicious and the main love interest Julia that just no one wanted to see. It was implied in the original, but you would never want to see it, because in the original Cowboy Bebop, Vicious is creepy as hell. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Cowboy Bebop anymore, but yeah, that was a really bad show. Anyway, so then supposedly that's the reason the original creators quit, because they didn't want to submit their precious characters to gross sex stuff. And don't feel bad for them, because they got an excellent exit package. They got so much money and they got such a good negotiation that they actually immediately after this created their own animation studio called the Avatar Studio, which is working on 3 brand new 3-hour-long Avatar movies that might be sequels, prequels, or just the original show done over again in CGI, because Netflix also likes that too. Anyway, that's the super interesting and super funny story that Netflix apparently used to have a sex mandate, and the sex mandate was so egregious that it made the original creators quit this reboot. And now here we are 5 years later, and now the show is finally said and done, and it seems that instead of being more sexy, it's actually been ultra sanitized in the other direction to be even less sexy. Oh, and I guess that brings us full circle to where we are now, and I might as well talk about the original topic that started this video off. So yeah, what the heck was so sexist about the original Avatar The Last Airbender? Well, apparently it was Sokka. And much to my unamusement, today that article that I made this whole video about, it's been updated to say that not the original show was a masterpiece of sexism, but now it says that Sokka was sexist. So I guess Sokka has lost his mojo. Anyway, that's sad, because the original article was way more up to interpretation, and I guess they were getting like flamed too much, which is why they rewrote it. But yeah, so if you've forgotten the first like 3 or so episodes of Avatar, Sokka's kind of sexy. He's like, oh, you can't do that because you're a woman, and you can't do that because you're a kid. And his arc is that he goes through that and he gets over that and he learns to be a better person. Also, if I remember right, I think he had kind of like a light version of Brock from Pokemon going on, where every time there was a hot, cute, eligible woman, he would like shoot a shot with her. But no, a young man can't be sexist, especially not in a medieval Asian society, especially not in 2024. How dare he be like that? Anyway, I'm bummed out about that too. I mean, it's not as funny, but it still kind of sucks because, you know, Sokka being a little bit sexist, it wasn't very nice, but it was real. I lived through the 90s, and a lot of people used to talk like that. Like, there were chauvinist assholes like that all over the place, and they always used to be like, a woman can't do that, a kid can't do that, you're just a kid, get with the program. Anyway, I don't know what the hell is even the point of making this live action remake if it's going to be more sanitized than a cartoon from 20 years ago. I thought the whole reason they were remaking it was to like appeal to adults who like remembered the cartoon. Maybe they're trying to like push it to kids because, I don't know, Nickelodeon's like in a state of like withdrawal right now. So I might as well say I've been very on the fence about the remake of Avatar because, I mean, they messed it up so bad the first time. Why would they ever do it again? It's obviously cursed and doomed right from the start, obviously. But when the Netflix trailer came out at the start of the year, I actually really liked the trailer. The trailer impressed me. Like, I thought the trailer looked exactly like the original show, only in live action. Like, they had the cabbage guy, they had the muscular old man, and so that kind of stuff impressed me. But now here we are a few months later, and it's turned into a mess again. So now I just await the release of the final show, and time will tell how messed up it actually is when we finally see it. Will it be a One Piece slam dunk or another abomination like Cowboy Bebop was? And oh man, what if despite all this like publicity about the toned down sexism, what if it still actually does have those 2 random sex scenes anyway? Because that hasn't actually been disproven until the show comes out. Wouldn't that be freaking wild if they like tried to make their show like so much less sexist, but then included actual sex in it? All right, anyway, that's all I gotta say about that, because that was kind of hilarious to me. And I think the whole like full circle of going from super sexy to super unsexy that they've been on is a wild ride. Now, I don't know if you guys give a damn. I don't know if you guys care, but leave a comment if you do, because if you do, maybe I'll review the show when it comes out, or maybe I won't because no one gives a damn. All right, thanks. I'm feeling better. Catch you later. Good night.